Okay, so I realize now that the first tutorial had bad audio. I'm going to be trying to do that again. Nobody will know, but I'm still going to say it. So for when you open up Blender, you get a screen like this after, yeah, you just get a screen like this, and the main way to navigate the viewport is with the middle mouse button. You can use the regular middle mouse button, just clicking and holding to rotate the view. Ah, forgot to turn on screencast. Boop. Is it there? Yeah, it's there. All right. And you can pan around with shift middle mouse click to go pan your view. You can scroll in and out to basically move your view in and out. Somewhat self-explanatory. And the number pads allow you to go into orthographic views, such as 1 for the front view, 3 for the right view, and 7 for the top view, which is for the most part all you need. In the cases where there's asymmetrical designs, such as when you're at the right view and it's different on the left, or you want to see the left view, you can press 9 to flip the view. Likewise with when you press 1 and flip to 9. It's not too important right now. We're just going to stick with 1 and 3. But yeah, it's going to be important later. And even though it's a little overwhelming now, um, we're going to be flipping a lot of things. So you should be able to get used to it over the course of this little tutorial, I hope. So first thing we're going to do is shift click the camera and shift click the light and press X to delete it. Shift click Shift click allows you to select multiple objects, so you're going to be doing that quite a bit. And it also applies when you're editing a model. So let's start with this default cube. I'm joking. I'm deleting it and adding a new cube. It's pointless, but force of habit. So what I did to add a new cube was press Shift A, and you go to Mesh, and you add a cube. And now I'm going to add a plane, again, using this little menu after I press Shift A. It can be whatever you want, but it's a little more complicated depending on what you click. I'm just going to go with a mesh plane and find a reference image. In this case, a Glock 17. So you can see that the texture isn't loaded here, and that's because of the solid view. If we switch to the material view, it should pop up once Blender stops baking. Ah, it's not responding. That's not good. All right. And it's doing some shader stuff. I did not know. I guess that's a new thing for 4.2. But yeah, you can see it like that. And in Saw View, you can press this little shading arrow at the top right here, click on it, and click on Texture to display it as well. Sometimes it's easier for me to just click the sphere instead of doing that because that's less buttons to press. But in the long run, this is also helpful. So we're going to scale this up. And to get to the top view, I press 7, but you don't really have to worry about it too much. And we're going to press R to rotate it. And you can see it sort of like rotates based off the view you're looking at. To fix that, you can press an axis such as X, Y, or Z. Z referring to the vertical axis in Blender's case. The Y-axis is the green line that you see over here, and the X-axis is the red line you see over here. This line being the front part, and this line being the right. So we're going to press RX 90, RZ 90 to rotate by those increments in the axis that I just referred to. So I'm going to press G and Z to bring it up and click to set its position. And we're going to be pressing G, R, and S a lot because those are the main ways to manipulate 3D models. I haven't even actually gone into the 3D modeling part yet though. So what we're going to do with this cube is we're going to delete half of it after we add an edge loop. Now we can add an edge loop by pressing Ctrl R and just clicking. We can change the amount of edge loops after I press Ctrl R by scrolling. For now, we just need one. So I'm just going to put one there. We're going to select these vertices and delete them after pressing X. X is just universal button to delete everything, which a lot of the buttons are universal, which is nice. So now I'm going to click this little wrench, the modifier bar, add modifier, generate, and mirror. Turn on clipping, which basically means that the middle vertices will stay stuck together no matter what. And if we have it off, it would separate, which is why we're going to keep it on, since most of the object is one shape. And we're going to press S to scale this down, scale down a little more, bring it in a little more for now to be more accurate with this shape. Press 3 to go to the side view, and we can just start tracing it essentially. But the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put on the X-ray view, which is right next to these 4 spheres at the top right. We click toggle X-ray, and that will allow us to select these edges in the back with B. When you press B, you can drag and select a selection of what you want to select, in this case vertices. There's different modes up here as well. You can select faces, edges, vertices. It's okay to stick with vertices. I did when I first started learning. These are just for later. If you want to get more comfortable with that, you can. And they'll just allow you to select faces, edges, which are really just points of vertices connected, which is why it's okay to stick with vertices in this case. And now what we're basically going to do, I'm pressing A to select everything just now. We're going to be doing that a bit, is basically just start tracing the model. I'm going to go with the inside. As you can see, I'm using B to select most of the time to get the back edges as well, because if I'm manipulating these edges, it might lead to undesired results later on. So I'm going to press B to select everything again, and we're just going to vaguely trace out this shape we want with just this cube. Now, it looks obviously really bad right now. I'm just lining up these parts, but we're going to add edge loops again by pressing Control R, bringing it down. And we're going to move this to basically line up with the inner edge of the model here, because we're going to smooth this part out later. So we're going to press B to do that again, and we're just going to press Control R, select the piece, and like left click to confirm its location, press B, and then G, and then middle mouse click to drag, middle mouse click to move on its axis, and just repeat that, like so. Oh. If the vertex accidentally disappears like that, you might have accidentally pressed H. You can press Alt H to unhide, and everything will be fine, probably. And we're just gonna keep lining things up by pressing G and middle mouse click. Control R, move your mouse up, and then click to set it again. And this is a fun little trick. If you select a whole loop, like so, which is just a selection of edges that are just connected together, we can press Control B to bevel. Again, you can scroll to change the amount of bevels, in this case where you don't need too much for now, and we're going to just leave it like that. We can model this part out later, but honestly I'm not going to worry about it just since this is a beginner's tutorial. And we can press E to extrude, which is something I just realized we haven't done yet. So you can press E and then middle mouse click to move it on axis and extrude forward. And that allows us to extrude a face. If we have a whole selection of a face, it allows us to extrude a face like that. But if it's just a vertice, it will also just extrude just a vertice, as well as if it was just an edge. So for now, we're not going to worry about that too much, and we're just going to extrude. And it gets a little funky there, but that's fine. I'm going to put a loop cut here and bring this edge back to match that up as best we can. And oh, I'm gonna extrude this again, and I'm gonna take a quick second to just look at our reference. So if you notice here, it looks like from this point, there's this little divot with this switch. I don't know what that switch does. I'm not too big on guns, but it starts protruding outwards on the x-axis in this direction. So we're gonna have to actually move on the x-axis. As you notice, this is all flat right now. We don't really have to worry about that. I'm gonna press 3 to go back into this view. It's just something to keep in mind. We're on face selection mode. I'll switch back to vertices since it's easier to control usually. And we're gonna B and then press G and then click. And it's just a lot of extruding, adding loop cuts. And once we have this shape, we're gonna select these vertices, this vertice and this vertice, and we're gonna extrude this out. And to make this a straight, flat face, we're gonna middle mouse click and make sure it's on the y-axis and press 0. Alternatively, you can press S, Y to go to the y-axis immediately and then press 0. Same with the X, Y, and Z axis, all of them. And we're gonna just keep modeling away. I'm gonna bring that a little forward. Do that. And since it's more protruded over here, we can actually take care of that right now by selecting these faces and bringing them up like so to get that little divot. We can put more definition to this divot by adding an edge loop around here and then bring this in a little. We could also just bevel this edge loop if we needed to, but I'm keeping it nice and simple for now. I might get into subdivision later in this tutorial, depends on how much time I'm running, which is like it's 12 minutes so far. I'm gonna keep bringing that forward and scale this to 0 again. And it looks like because of that divot, the faces over here are a little off. So I'm gonna bring a new edge loop, scale on the y-axis, press 0. Oh, accidentally hid. I'm gonna press Gmail mouse click. I'm in a Discord call right now. I'm just deafened, which is why you heard a notification. My bad if that bothered you. SZ0 to flatten it on the top Z-axis or Z-axis. I don't really know how people pronounce Z. That looks a little whack. Let's see. Ah. That's why. I'm actually gonna move these vertices down by pressing G and Z, just so that it doesn't get messed up when I flatten the face, because it got a little messed up when I did that earlier. So let me press SZ0 again. This looks alright. I'll fix this part later. Generally speaking, stuff like this is not good for the model because it leads to more unpredictable results later on in the subdivision phase. So let's see. Now, what we're gonna do now is we're gonna add a new edge loop, and in this part we'll be lining up this face to this outer part, this outer line you can see here. To get that more smoothed shape. And what I did just now, I apologize for not explaining earlier, is I clicked a face and then control clicked on another face. What that will let you do is it will select all the faces to get to that face in the shortest path possible. So sometimes it's a little unpredictable because you don't really, like, I guess, account for everything, but usually speaking, it's reliable. Bring that forward, press 0. B, do this. Bring this over here. B select. And it's important to press B and select in this mode, because if you don't, you will just select one of a loop of these vertices and that will not be good. And this gun is looking way too wide, so I'm going to scale everything. I'm going to scale by the x-axis, and then I'm going to move it by the x-axis to a more Glock shape. It looks like it's shaping up. I can work with this. I'm just going to make sure everything's nice and tidy though. There we go. And we're going to add one more edge loop because we can see this extrusion that reaches all the way around to this part of the gun. We can also, actually, might as well do this now. Select all these faces. I'm just control clicking there so that I just select all the faces in the path. And we're just going to match it up a bit better. Like so. I'm going to slide these edges over here. No. I might screw myself with that topology over there. I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to bring this face down. No, I won't. Let's see. That should work. Actually, let's delete this part. I screwed up a bit there, my bad. And real quick, when I was refilling this face over here because I deleted that other portion, I pressed F and I pressed these two vertices and press J, which allows us to connect the edge down here. I press Control R to add a loop, and I can press J to recombine it. Let me just bring this up so it lines it up better. There we go. And what we're gonna do here is we're just gonna ignore this divot for now. We can worry about that later. I realized that I was a little dumb earlier. And I'm just gonna extrude this all the way. It looks very basic right now, but it should be workable. Let's see. Now, with this trigger guard, we can place our edge loops more accurately to see where the extrusion starts. And that can allow us to just begin working on it. So first thing we can do is actually bring this a little lower to have more of that smoother transition that's seen on the gun. And then we can extrude it and scale it. We're going to be doing what we've been doing earlier and just adding loops, and we can move the dots around, or alternatively we can scale them by the y-axis inwards. But generally speaking, sometimes if you want to be more precise, it is easier to just drag them all around like that. You can be, like, I recommend being more simple with how many edge loops you're coming with, because cutting into the model, and it's just easier in the long run because we're going to apply a subdivision modifier on the gun later. I'm not going to fully detail the gun since this is just a beginning tutorial, but you kind of get the idea from here. You extrude and you add loops, and then you move things accordingly. And when things look a little off in another view, you change things accordingly. You don't want to add too many loops because it might be a little more complicated to work with your model later on. And just now I just press R to rotate the loop. But you can honestly just grab the loop and just change things that way. It's just practice. So now over here, I'm gonna add a loop down here because what we're gonna do is we're gonna connect here and here, and we're gonna have the same amount of this entire area. To elaborate, we're gonna connect this entire area together, and we want to make sure they have the same amount of faces, which they do because I just added this loop. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna press 3 again, and we're gonna select here, here, and here. I did that earlier, but I'm redoing it again. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna press X, and instead of vertices, we're gonna click delete faces, so that we can have the result like that. We're gonna select these two vertices and these two vertices and press F to connect them. Likewise, we're gonna do the same thing here. Press F, same thing here, press F, and same thing here, press F. And this is where actually using edge selection could be easier because we just need to select things twice and press F instead of selecting things 4 times with these vertices. I just control click to select all the edges there as well. There's multiple ways of selecting things, and it's just easier when you get the hang of selecting everything faster. Let's move this trigger guard more closer in. Sometimes control clicking is faster than shift selecting. It depends on the situation. Yeah, that looks more trigger guardy. And because we should probably take care of it, we're gonna add in the top part of the Glock. Even though this part isn't done, but maybe it's just because I want to see the whole thing, and it's nicer to just see it. Generally speaking, you probably don't want to do that. But what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna shift select the face and press Shift D. And that will allow us to duplicate that little section. Now we're gonna press P and by selection to separate it into a separate object. Why we do that is just it's much more easier to manage. Ah, I shouldn't have moved that up though. So we're gonna do that again, Shift D, and we're gonna right click to reset its position to make sure it's perfectly lined up with this bottom portion. And then we're gonna do P by selection. What's nice is when we do that, the mirror modifier stays applied because it keeps all the modifiers applied when we duplicate it and separate it. So now we're gonna generally move to the same area. You don't have to be too precise because it's not gonna be that big of a deal. And we're gonna extrude and move everything till it lines up. Now, it's just a simple cube there, but you can sort of see things start to shape up. It's just a matter of adding more detail now using the methods we are already aware of, but maybe using them in different ways. So if we look at the reference picture here, you can see this little edge that insets more inward. And that's another part of 3D modeling is interpreting. So we're going to bring an edge loop and we're going to line that up. That seems just about right. We're going to grab this top edge. You can also select the edge with the vertice method. I already have edge selection mode on, so I'm just doing this. And we're going to bring that a little in to be more accurate with that. We can do the same thing with this front part here where you can sort of see it come inwards. So let's grab these two faces, extrude them a little forward. And we're just going to bring this face downwards to match that appearance. And if you are not feeling confident about how how accurately the model is to the reference, you can always find more reference. Like in this case, I'm just relying on the side reference of the gun. But you can always find more views of your reference to better understand it, I guess. Like to more precisely, like, oh, maybe it should have been inset more or less. It's It's just nice to have more references when you can. When you can't, interpreting is a very important part of it. But that's a later problem. And something fun we can do with bevels is, let me add edge loops to line up with this grip part. Something fun we can do with bevels is with multiple edge loops that are all on a flat face, like so. If we bevel it, it'll stay flat and it'll just allow us to have more edge loops. In this case, I can match up the gun's trigger guard. So what I'm going to do here is we'll match everything up. We can also change the amount of X-ray over here, which I don't think it does too much. I think you need a specific image thing. I kind of just deal with it. There's probably a solution out there. I'm not the best tutorial guy, but we're going to match that up and select all these big faces. And we are going to extrude that inwards by pressing G and middle mouse clicking to move it on the x-axis. I'm going to press S, x-axis, and press 0 to flatten it on the x-axis. It gets a little it takes a little while to figure everything out, but it's a learning process. We're going to click up here and we're going to change the individual origins. And why we're going to do that is when we scale inwards by the y-axis, it scales based off the median point of all the faces selected. If we set it to individual origins, it'll scale based off of each selected face that's separate from the other faces. So it can scale like so. It's hard to explain verbally, but easier when you see it visually. So now we have this neat little grip thingy. It's not fully accurate. If I want to make it more accurate, I could probably bring it in closer. Let's select everything. And press G, X, and we can bring it in closer. And that should be more accurate. We can also extrude that and scale all of this. Bring this down to more accurately reflect the concept. I'm not actually looking at the concept, so I went a little too far. But since it's just beginner stuff, don't worry too much about that. Eventually, like, there's probably more better 3D modeling tutorials at an intermediate level. You can watch those after you watch this, I guess. But now we can focus on adding details onto this lower part. We're not going to add the trigger, but by now, I think you should know the drill of just adding a cube or grabbing a face, separating it, and then just extruding it and just moving things around. Let's see. This was the part. It's a little hard to see how it's like. So that's obviously rounded out at the bottom, and this is inset inwards, I believe. So let's start with that. Actually, let's bring the face more frontwards and then do that. It should change how the X-ray affects everything. Yeah, it does. So we're going to select vertice mode, bring this forward. And we can add more edge loops if we want, but like I said, it becomes much more harder to manage with more loops because there's more vertices and so on and so forth. And we're gonna bring this entire part inwards to match the concept. Not concept, the reference. And we're also gonna bring this inwards to smooth everything out. Double tap G to be able to slide edges around. The same thing could be applied to vertices and faces, but it's easier just to do that with edges. And we're still on edge select mode. So now we're going to do this part. Make sure to have X-ray on to see the vertices. And we're gonna, actually, I'm gonna do something fun here. I'm gonna use the knife tool that will allow us to manually cut in shapes. So we're gonna cut out exactly how we want, not exactly, but how we want this model to be like. And I'm gonna just move this edge downwards. And I'm gonna select all of these faces, be select, and what I did there is put on face select mode to be able to do this. I just did out of habit, which is my bad. Actually, let me smooth that out a little. Select all of these faces with B and selecting again, and push it on out. And that'll allow us to have that look that we want. Now, there's something different with all of these faces with the other ones, and that is some of them are not quads, which 4 vertices of a face, basically, it's just not very good when it comes down to the actual model since it makes things a lot more unpredictable. So we're going to have to fix a lot of it. So first things first, I'm going to add an edge loop and connect these for now. Let's bring this out. And we're going to be getting rid of all these triangles and wacky shapes. And there's plenty of methods to do that. The easiest one being just adding a loop cut and then just connecting it with J, the J key, but sometimes that leaves you with a lot more edges than required. And sometimes it's easier to just terminate things. Let me go into object mode and press hide. Oh my god, I completely forgot to tell everyone to switch between object and edit mode at the start. But the best way to do that is to press tab to switch in between it. I don't really do that because I didn't get into a habit of that, but that's beside the point. But another way to terminate edge loops, let me undo what I did just there. Let me hide this top part, is to, and this is in specific cases where there's 5 points. Don't ask me how I remember this method for this specific situation, but you press the knife tool, which is K, and you make a cut like so, and you add an edge loop on this side, and you press these 2 vertices and press J, if you want to be more efficient about it, but that's honestly a later problem. Sometimes it's more efficient not to do that, but in this case, it was the right call. I'll do that again here to demonstrate since there's 5 points. Actually, maybe it's easier to just add a loop cut here, although it gets a little messy here. That's another thing you gotta worry about, is terminating things. Let's see. Let's add a loop here and press J. I think that's the best we can do in that situation. And we're gonna do the same thing up top here. Press J after adding a loop. You can notice the loop abruptly stops whenever there's a triangle or an n-gon, which is a face that has more than 4 vertices. And there we go. It's a little messy, but we can slide things around and fix that. Alright, Now I only have two more things to go over. I'm at 30 minutes. That's a little much, but that's probably fine. So we're going to press Alt H and we're going to bring this back here because I might accidentally select it a bit too often. And what we're going to do now is we're going to add a cylinder for the barrel. Boom, 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 boom. I'm going to switch the vertices to 8. And the reason why I do that is when you saw me terminating the n-gons and triangles earlier, it's important to have things in quads. So with the number of vertices, it's important to have them in multiples of 4s. So 4, 8, 12, 32. But 8 and 12 is a nice one. And as you can see here, if I press 2 vertices and press J, bam, they're all quads. Very nice. We can do the same thing with the bottom if we need to. Bam, bam. But the reason why it's important to have less vertices is because it's easier to manage, since we'll make this higher poly soon. So we're going to rotate this. Sorry if I'm moving a little fast, but I'm going to press 3 and we're going to rotate this. Grab it, scale it, and we're just going to line it up to the size of the barrel. Now, technically speaking, the inside of a barrel gets a little complicated because it connects to the ejection port, but I'm not worrying about gun stuff right now. Ah, shoot. I just realized I did something stupid. Alt G to reset its position. It should not have been over there. But what we're going to do here is we're going to bring this inside the model, however deep we want the barrel. Let's say that works. And we're going to leave it there for now. We're going to select this object and we're going to add a new modifier. And that's going to be the boolean. And we select a cylinder. Now, if we hide, you can see the cylinder. We can see exactly what it does. It's not applied yet, so we're going to go apply everything now. Actually, what would happen if I applied the boolean first? That happens, which is why we're going to apply the mirror first. And we're going to apply the boolean. So what we're going to see here is now that we applied the mirror modifier, this is an actual, the other side of the model is an actual part of the model now. But that does come with its fair share of like complications since, you know, you don't want to model both sides at once. So we're going to reapply the mirror, which is a little convoluted. There's definitely an easier method. I'm just not the best at finding them. So we're going to re-add the mirror modifier. Turn on clipping. And X-ray mode still on. We're gonna fix this entire face here, which you can see is a bit convoluted due to the Boolean cut, which is what Booleans usually do, but it was in this case necessary to get this cylindrical cut. So we're gonna add, that's Control T. We're gonna add one loop cut with Control R. Press S and 0 to flatten it. Bring it up to around to where the cylinder is, and press J. Let's see. Yeah, everything's looking fine back there. We're going to select these two vertices and press J. These two vertices and press J. That should make a quad. Let's see, can I move that? Oh, that's not good. When there's two vertices that are overlapping exactly on their position, we can go to Mesh, Cleanup, and Merge by Distance to fix that. That tends to happen when you might have accidentally pressed V, which rips a vertice out. But honestly, when that happens and when you accidentally press V, you can always just undo it. So not too big of a deal. And now we're going to try adding subdivision, which is another part. If you just want to learn the basics of basic 3D modeling and then move on to better tutorials, here's a good point to stop because that's going to be most of the tools you're going to be using, and most tutorials will probably expect you to know that stuff by now. But to go over subdivision, we're going to have to add a new modifier. and that is the subdivision. And generally speaking, you can see that it really messes up the model right now. Let's turn that off for now. But generally speaking, it is used to make higher poly and higher detailed 3D models. The way you can sort of see how it just smooths everything out. The main way to solve that is adding loop cuts to make these supporting loops to control how much it does that. So let's just do that really quick. Let's do that to the inside of this cylinder here as well. And the outside as well. It's getting a little messy there. Let's just, yeah, I'll leave it like that for now, if it's not too much trouble. And as you can see, the cylinder without supporting loops will end up more around, which is the result we're looking for. So we're just going to add loops where the model needs it. And it's starting to look nice. Although a little messy, which is why topology is important. Let's see, let's add a loop on the side here and bring that down. You can sort of see how this sharpens that loop as well. So let's fix that real quick. We can press this little TV icon to turn off its effect. So let's just do that real quick. Oh, looks like there's multiple vertices there. A, mesh, cleanup, merge by distance. Why is it not letting me select that? There we go. And we're going to select it all the way up until here to dissolve this edge. And now, actually, let's dissolve this vertex as well so that we can keep this part nice and clean. What we're going to do here, and we'll fix this later, is add a loop here. Press SZ0 to flatten it. Bring this down. And we're going to just press J here and clean a few things up. This should be... Yeah, there we go. And I just did that by pressing different dots, pressing J and all of that. Adding loop cuts where I need to. It's a little hard to follow sometimes, and I apologize for that. Let's see how it looks with subdivision on now. The front is looking a lot better and a lot cleaner. And we can also change the amount it has over here for the viewport and the render. So, let's dissolve this edge here. I'm going to add a edge loop here to support that part. Slide these down to support it over here, and vice versa over here. Now we're going to select these two vertices and press J, and these two vertices, not those two vertices. Actually, let's slide this up and terminate that here. A, mesh, cleanup, merge by distance. And let's see. If we press here, that'll make a triangle. If we press here, that'll make a triangle as well. And Again, generally speaking, you want to avoid triangles because it becomes more unpredictable. But in this case, I guess it's fine. I'm not going to worry about it too much. And you can see how when we add edge loops, it does sharpen everything, as mentioned before. Here, I'm going to be a little lazy because I think I can afford to be. And I'm going to select all of these edge loops, and as I've done, ooh, actually, just, yeah, I'll just select all those edge loops and then fix it later. Select all of these edge loops, and now I'm going to press Control B to bevel. The issue is with bevels, sometimes the bevels can intersect when you overdo it. So we're going to want to do this smart, and we're going to have the bevel amount be 2 so that it just ends up with quads, which is really nice. And it also terminates with quads, which is nice as well. So now with the bevel there, they should stay sharp. Yeah, stay sharp, it's nice. And let's bring another edge loop. It's going to be a little sharp at the bottom, but should be fine. This is just for the subdivision view. And we're going to do the same thing here. Bam. Now, since the grip is usually smooth, there's only going to be a few parts we're going to need to add supporting loops to. And that's going to be over here and over here and these parts because they have a harsher line, I guess. Harsher edge. I forget to speak English sometimes. So we're just going to do that. We're going to add some loops to make that a bit harsher, which looks like it worked. If we go to object mode, you can see that's a bit more harsh, which is what we are looking for. And everything else is nice and smooth, which is also what we are looking for. And we're going to just do that over here with all these funky parts. Topology's a little funky here, but we can spend time to fix it later on. And we're going to set object shade smooth just to make it look a little nicer. And you can see sort of how the subdivision things works. I did not do a very clean job of this at all, but if you're beginning, it should help to just be able to get all those tools in mind and an understanding of everything. Ah, would you look at that? That bottom part's messy. Edge loop. That solves my problem. And there you go. Bit longer than I expected, but should be fine. I completely forgot about the barrel. Let's unhide the barrel, which is still a cylinder. Add modifier. And we're going to add a subdivision to it. And as you can see, it subdivides better because of that. But we're just going to model out this barrel real quick. And what we're going to do is we're going to extrude inwards. We're going to press E and scale, which is S. And then we're going to press E and just drag it all the way, not all the way back, but a good amount to the point where nobody worries about it. And since clocks function like this, like pew pew, we're going to use this subdivision modifier, except we're going to add more edge loops like we were doing earlier. It's on the inside. We want one on the outside. Just have everything look nice. Inside edge loop. We can add a few edge loops here. If we go into object mode, it's a nice looking barrel. Let's shade smooth that. And bam, you got a high poly gun. Again, it's not perfect. I skipped a few steps, but yeah.